And what a nightmare that would be, a recession in darkness. Right now, our economy is heading that way. None of the economic indicators look good. None of the agencies have a good forecast, and none of the investors have anything good to say. We'll start with the markets. It's the easiest way to gauge the economic mood, and once again, it's not good news. In America, Dow Jones fell nearly 1.6%, Nasdaq dropped 3%, Japan's Nikkei closed 1% down, European stocks lost 0.7%, in India, the Nifty closed around 0.3% down. Those numbers may not seem as worrying as before, but look at the overall picture. This is the worst performance by emerging stocks in 24 years. They fell 20% during the 1998 Asian financial crisis. This year, they're down 17%. 17% in just about 6 months. And the reason is quite clear. Inflation worries. The US Federal Reserve is consistently hiking interest rates to tame inflation. They could do it again in the month of July. Experts are predicting another 75 basis point hike. And this is bad news for India. The Reserve Bank of India is going to come up with its next policy announcement in August, not in July. They too are expected to hike interests. But the move will come 1 month later. The result? More pressure on the Indian rupee. It is already sliding towards new records. Today, the rupee briefly slid below 79 against the US dollar. Imagine that, $1 now equals almost 79 rupees. To give you some context, it was 73 rupees in mid-January this year. Experts say this could become the new normal. The dollar could breach 80 or 81. What does that mean for you, the consumer? More inflationary pain. If the rupee loses value, imports become more expensive. You're paying more money for the same goods. That's what we call imported inflation. And right now, India is heading in that direction. The RBI says inflation will remain above 6% until December. And that is the best case scenario, by the way. Because India's inflation is at 7.79%. Bringing it down to 6% will be a tough job, especially with the rising dollar. A lot depends on what happens in the Western markets, in the US and in Europe. Both economies are dangerously close to a recession. Earlier today, the US revised its economic data for the first quarter of 2022. The first estimate showed a GDP contraction of 1.4%. The revised data says 1.6%. Compare that to the last quarter of 2021. The US economy grew 6.9%. Do you see the gap here? From 6.9% growth to 1.6% contraction. And remember, this was before the interest hikes. So at this rate, a recession looks inevitable. Listen to this assessment by the IMF chief.
We expect the US economy will slow. We are conscious that there is a narrowing path to avoiding a recession in the US. We also have to recognize the uncertainty of the current situation. The economy continues to recover from the pandemic, and important shocks are buffering the economy from the Russian invasion of Ukraine and from lockdowns in China. In other words, there is a lot that is exogenous but is impacting the US.
Narrowing path to avoiding a recession. That's what the IMF is saying, and the same applies to Europe. Morgan Stanley has published a new forecast for the Eurozone. They are projecting a recession by the end of 2022. Two reasons for that. A, the risk of Russia cutting off gas supplies, and B, falling business morale. In other words, investors are being put off by inflation. So that's two major economies at risk of recession, the United States and Europe. If they slip into recession, the whole world will follow. And do you know the worst part? All of this is being predicted in real time. Every bank is warning of a recession. Every economist is calling for proactive measures, but governments are still not getting a handle on it. They're still stuck in the policies of the 1950s, letting central banks control inflation, as if they have no power to help the people. The solution to this crisis is not just economic, it must be political. This is the time for creative policy making to work in tandem with the central banks. Because right now we are in the middle of a slow motion train crash. We can see what's happening. We can see the impending disaster. But we seem to be helpless to stop it. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.